Okay, hi, it's Congresswoman Schakowsky here. I just had the privilege of talking with a class full of students, virtually of course, at Niles North High School, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, whose teacher is the incredible Pankaj Sharma, who is just an amazing teacher. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. He was a Golden Apple teacher, which is like the best thing that you can be. And I've spoken to his classes a number of times through the years. This time is the first time virtually. And the main purpose was for me to be able to ask students, what has the pandemic done to him? And of course, this is has been designated by Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats to be the day of action for the children, with an emphasis on schools and what the situation with mostly distance learning, but any kind of learning. These students have been in class since August 27th, and it is all virtual right now. Although I did talk to a couple of students who are in cross-country running, and together they've been able to run 6 days a week, at least one of the boys. A girl who has just recently moved from New Jersey and trying to figure out how she's going to meet anybody, decided to join cross-country. But in general, feel free to add at any time, really, Mr. Sharma. But one of the things that came up over and over again is the lack of the social interaction. That while students in different ways have accommodated to distance learning, remote learning, that they really do miss being able to get together, to meet people. Many have begin by saying, I'm a very social person. And two at least have described some real effect on their happiness and sense of well-being because of the tensions. We did encounter students who have had a very scary time. One whose mom was a preschool teacher, lost her job, and she described the summer as very frightening because of the loss of income. And the issue of income came up a number of times. Even some students who have been not necessarily regular participants in the remote learning, because they need to go out and get a job and can't always be there at school. We heard from students. It's a very diverse population at Niles North. So there are a number of students who are immigrants, who may be themselves citizens, but their parents not. One who the green card application has been delayed because of the pandemic. And so things are slowed down, and that makes a big difference in their lives to not have the green card and the official legal status, legal permanent resident status. I have to say, for the most part, these students really seem to be so interested. They had some questions for me. How are we going, Congresswoman Schakowsky, going to help? I told them about the negotiations that are going on right now for the HEROES Act that would provide more money to schools. I told them that so many of the schools need HVAC, the ventilation systems that are not adequate right now for students to be back in the classroom. But I would say universally, maybe there was one student, I think, who said that she always thought that that remote learning was probably a good thing. I think that without exception, even her, that the opportunity to be with their teachers, to be there with students, to get the benefit of interaction. But there were a lot of families where either the student, the parent, or the grandparent was compromised physically. And so they were very cognizant of not themselves bringing home the virus, that it meant more confinement for them because they certainly didn't want anybody to get sick. One of the families, a grandparent in Jordan died, and they were unable, because of the ban on travel, to be with that grandparent. So very personal kinds of things that affected their lives. And I asked how it was for them to be on the screen for several hours a day. They had, some found it, that's what I do anyway. I'm sure someone who plays video games a lot, it wasn't that much difference to be behind a screen all day. But some students themselves, they just really missed being in an interactive situation with with other students. But it seemed like a lot of them, bless their hearts, were really coping as much as possible with the kind of tension, and that did come up, the tensions in families. One student whose parents are divorced, and it was hard for her to navigate that. And think about that, at best, navigating a divorce situation can be hard for a teenager, but it was really difficult for her. Her mom was immunocompromised, and so anyway, they were anxious to share their views. I was really impressed with that, and I think all of them are looking forward to a time of normality, where they can. One student talked about homecoming and prom and just normal things that their parents were telling them were part of their growing up, and now it's not available to them. So I just appreciated their sharing. But I really would like to turn it over to their teacher, Mr. Sharma, who I think people would be interested in from your perspective as a teacher, but also what you see from your students and the impact of the coronavirus.
Sure, thank you. And I really want to thank you, Congresswoman Schakowsky, for hosting that session with our students. It struck me how much they wanted to share with you. I've never seen so many virtual hands go up. It's a simple question. What's it been like for you and your families the last few months? And I think they appreciated that you were interested in taking notes, and we're going to take that information back to Congress. And I think our students and their families are dealing with a collective trauma. This has been a very stressful 5-6 months for our students. Everyone is making a sacrifice, but the sacrifice is not equally shared. And many of our students, their parents have lost their jobs. Their parents are frontline workers. They've gotten sick. They live in multi-generational households. As you said, they're scared about getting their grandparents sick. Many of our students struggle to have Wi-Fi access, secure housing, enough food. And these were all issues that existed before the pandemic, and they've been exacerbated. And we see that as teachers. Some of our students can manage. They have enough space. They have good Wi-Fi. They have 2 parents at home to support them. But many of our students don't have those things, and this has exacerbated the situation. And we really appreciate that you're advocating for increased funding for state and local governments, because Congress hasn't done enough yet. And as a teacher, I'm very concerned about potential cuts in the future for state and local governments and districts like ours that will face perhaps deficits. And that's really going to create an issue going forward, because if we don't have strong public services and we can't invest in public education for our children, they're set back for years. Our whole economy is set back permanently going forward. And we saw that with the Great Recession, and we don't want to see that happen this time.
We're very afraid that we're going to see school districts have to cut the number of teachers as well. And I think we all know, as hopefully we do start to open up, you're going to need more teachers, not less, because there's going to be need for more space. There was one other observation I wanted to make about one student who I think is probably a very good student, who said, he really missed the direct classes because he actually lost motivation to get involved. He knew that his grades were going to be held steady. They weren't going to be going down. And so he lost motivation. But you're right that there are families. One young woman was saying that she was on the phone because her sister downstairs was using the computer in order to be with her classroom. So, and you think that we are losing some students just because of the technology, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that students don't have equal access to Wi-Fi, to devices, or they have to watch younger siblings, help them with their school. And I know that I've had a number of students who had to pick up jobs, as you were saying, because their mother and father lost their jobs or their mother and father are immunocompromised. So I have students who say, I can't come to my remote class today at 1 o'clock or 10 a.m. because I have to work. And as a teacher, it's really heartbreaking because you see students sacrificing their futures to help their families get through the present. And they're put in a really difficult position.
I just want to say that there are so many roadblocks to passing what is such sensible information. Right now, the president and Secretary DeVos, Secretary of Education, have prioritized significantly schools that are open. In fact, are threatening school districts that are going virtual because threatening them with losing money, losing federal dollars if they don't open in person. And that is so dangerous and so incredibly unfair. And, we have seen the need and the need has been documented for the need. I mentioned the HVAC systems. That's just one thing. We want to make sure that personal protective gear is available for those at the schools that need them, that all of the cleaning is done on a regular basis that needs to be. We are discovering that school districts that have opened, many have closed and have gone virtual because it just hasn't worked. And we've seen outbreaks that have ensued. We've also seen some studies that say that as good as Niles North and many have tried to make the virtual learning, that there has been a loss in educational achievement over the time of this virus. And it's worse, no surprise, for Latinx students and for African American students. We've seen the inequities over and over again that, as you said, Mr. Sharma, have been before the virus and after it, and that there's been such inequities that have been revealed by the virus that have existed for a long time, and that's certainly true in education as well. And so we want to make sure that all our students have equal opportunity and don't lose up to 6 or 8 months of educational opportunity at this time. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to mention. So, we're fighting every day for the HEROES Act that would do $1 trillion for state and local government and be sure that a good deal of that money would go to schools. But also we're pushing for an additional $300 billion that would exclusively go to education, to schools. And we're not going to quit until that happens. We cannot afford to sacrifice a generation of students right now because of policies that just have not worked and aren't going to work. We need to all pull together to make that difference. All right, so I think I'm going to end there. If you have any other, we need to put in calls to Mitch McConnell, because a lot of these bills, all of these bills really are sitting at his desk. And we are waiting for that moment when we're going to be able to sit down. The Speaker of the House has been willing to go halfway. The bill we proposed was $3 trillion. The one that the Republicans had proposed, the HEALS Act, was $1 trillion. She said, let's meet in the middle, a $2 trillion bill that could really help so many of our families, our communities, and certainly our children.
Thank you. I would just add that, as teachers, we're always trying to meet the needs of our students, especially those that are most at risk or marginalized. And since the pandemic, we have more students with more needs than ever, and their families have more needs than ever. But and we're not with them in person, and it's harder to meet those needs, and we need more tools, and we need more funding to be able to support our families and their students. And so we really are calling upon Congress to do what's common sense, and that's to protect American students and their families, and in doing so, help our economy in the long run. To not do this is just going to make us live through the stressful times for indefinitely, for years going forward.
Right. Okay, well then let me just thank Pankaj Sharma, fabulous teacher at Niles North High School in my district. And also the input that I got from so many students today. They were anxious to talk about it. And I'm grateful to them for sharing the hardships that this pandemic has caused so many of our families and our children. So thanks, I'm done.
Thanks. It was great to have you there.
Thank you.